Florida hosts Ole Miss in the regular season finale for both teams ahead of the SEC tournament next week. Both coming off big wins as well. Florida went on the road and beat Alabama. Ole Miss hosted Tennessee, beat the Vols in a huge victory for the Rebels there. We'll dive into each side here in a second, Dion. But big picture, what's the biggest storyline or biggest X factor you're watching that could swing this game?
Um, Florida. Florida's bigs. I really feel like they can control games. Um, Ole Miss guards though can also, but like it feels offsetting. If you're going into a game where your guards are the best positions on your team against Florida, who has, in my opinion, the best guard trio in the country, um, probably not the right recipe for success, especially because Florida can bigs can control the game. And I think how talented Elijah Martin, Walter Clayton, and them are, Will Richard as well, it is what makes the bigs so impactful for them because you have three of the best guards in the country, but at the same time, you can control a game with your bigs just getting offensive rebounds. And I think that puts teams in a really tough spot of like, what are we supposed to do here?
What position does Ole Miss have an advantage in this game? Is
Is
it
it in
in?
Ole Miss?
It's in Gainesville.
Okay. So Lane won't be there. Because that was pretty much the only advantage I could think of.
Because to me, just starting lineup wise, all five spots favor Florida. Like just individual matchups. I think if Ole Miss has any advantage, is that you're bringing Jamin Brakefield off the bench, and he's been phenomenal pretty much all season, but particularly of late. He had 21 in the Tennessee win, including the game winner for them. He's been phenomenal, and I think you could argue that like bringing him off the bench is an advantage over Florida. But like Florida sometimes is bringing Alex Condon off the bench. Florida's bringing legitimate guys off the bench as well. If this Florida team has a chance to make the Final Four, win the national championship, like they've set the bar for themselves so high. And you and I doing these previews 2 months ago, we're talking about if Florida was actually that good because they hadn't played anybody.
Right.
Well, they've got an SEC play and they've won at Bama and at Auburn,
Yeah. No, they
and
made
and
sure to
looked the
shut us
part.
up very quickly.
They did. Like they're fantastic. Like I'm going to view Ole Miss differently if they play Florida close on the road.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of where we're at with both teams right now.
So, like I'm learning how analytics work. 2025 me, we're learning analytics. 2026 me is an advanced analytics guy. Florida being fourth in KenPom makes complete sense. Whether I know what I'm reading or not, like whether I know what net rating means or not, Florida being fourth makes complete sense. If anything, it's too low, right? Like if you look at it, when you look at the AP 20 top 25, or you look at KenPom, or you look at like any bracket matrix, you can go down and you can nitpick, you can find issues with it and be like, hey, maybe I don't agree with Gonzaga being eighth in KenPom, right? Maybe that's because they're beating up on lesser teams.
Right.
Florida, that's not the case. Like wherever you put Florida, it's like, yeah, no, I agree. If anything, that's too low. Florida is in the conversation with the Duke, Auburn, Houston's of the world, in my opinion. We're just not having those conversations yet.
Yeah. If you are going to nitpick with Florida and give Ole Miss an opportunity, it's that Florida does not always start fast.
Mm-hmm.
Against Georgia, they got down big early in that game. That's been the thing with them in a lot of these games is they will start slow. Even in some of their big wins, like go back to the Auburn win. They got down double digits pretty early because they just were slow coming out of the gates. The loss to Missouri. They came back from a huge deficit, lost by one, but got to a huge deficit because they were slow coming out of the gates. There could be an opportunity for Ole Miss to jump on Florida early, which I think is the only chance Ole Miss has to win this game. If they don't do that, Florida on senior night at home probably going to run away with things. You have to take advantage of things early and be ready to play for Ole Miss, which at this point I think we know that they can. Just a matter of if they will.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Ole Miss at their peak is a team you really want nothing to do with. But at their lows, it could be one of the easiest games of the season for you too. And I'm glad you mentioned senior night because I've been ignoring that all week, and that's been killing me. But they have what, like three seniors? All three guards are seniors. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean that's a big night for Florida to say the least. I think they're going to come out very, very excited. This feels definitely like a punch you in the mouth game. Like, let's get up out of here. We have nothing to worry about.
Yeah. It'll be, you have to, again, slow start could happen with just the emotions of senior night, right? As well. I think that's Ole Miss's biggest thing. I like how you talked about Ole Miss kind of being hot and cold. I think at their best, Ole Miss is a Sweet 16 caliber team. At their worst, they get upset in the first round by like double digits.
Yeah.
And that's kind of who they've been. I think that's also why the Tennessee victory was so big for Ole Miss because they haven't had a lot of like at least recently, the high end wins. Go back to when they beat Kentucky by 14 a month ago. That was huge. But before Tennessee, the wins were LSU, South Carolina, Oklahoma, which like not the bottom third teams in the SEC. When you had played the good teams, you had gotten worked by Auburn, lost Mississippi State, but double digits, lost to Vandy. They needed something like this. Like they needed that Tennessee victory. I don't know if I trust them to repeat it again against Florida, but there's some positive momentum going here that I think Ole Miss needed and did not have.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I think they I mean, the last time I think they had this much momentum was the Auburn game, late January, where they lost to Auburn by single digits at the crib. Lane was in the front row.
Yeah, so January 14th they beat Bama by double digits. And this was it was January 14th. And this was the point where they were 15-2, 4-0 in the SEC, and I think everyone was like, "Oh, well, miss Chris Beard, like this is the team." Since then, they are 6-7.
It's tough. That's tough.
It
That's
is
tough.
tough. Like I mean, the SEC is that tough.
It is. I definitely thought they were better than Mississippi State too, for what it's worth. They're not.
Got
But
swept. They got swept by them.
yeah, I definitely thought they were better than them. They're just not close. Padula though, this is Sean Padula and Sean Padula teams in a nutshell, though, right? Like this is exactly who he is. This is exactly who. Um, how do I say this politely? Um,
I think we've talked about this in a different way, though. The fact that we're talking about like Sean Padula stuff, one, it's a credit to how good Sean Padula's been, but
okay,
also like, why are we not talking about Dre Davis or Matthew Morrell? Like
it's
those
Padula's
guys,
team.
those are the guys that need to play well, that should play well, but instead this has like become Sean Padula's team, which is fine. But if you're going to reach your potential, if you're Ole Miss, those other two guys and Breakfield and
Show.
these other guys gotta step up. I think that's kind of the issue.
No, I completely agree. What's interesting to me is obviously Beard wants out. He's got his boys pretty much twerking for him to get other jobs. So Beard wants out. I wonder how much of Beard wanting out plays into the 6-7 over the last 13. However, the flip side of that, I look at Lane Kiffin's success at Ole Miss, and he's turned down some big jobs to stay at Ole Miss. And he's been able to, he's never got over that hump. But he's put together phenomenal teams that we thought should get over the hump. Why would Chris Beard want out? In my opinion, massive difference. I don't think he ever built a roster better than this at Ole Miss. When I look at Lane Kiffin, I'm like, yeah, he doesn't need Jackson Dart. That dude stinks. Like he can do better. He can do better. And I'm like, Lane Kiffin can actually recruit people to the sit. Lane Kiffin's a very likable dude. He's the type of guy you want to play with. Or excuse me, play for. He's the type of guy like if you win, you're going to the bar with your coach. Coach is buying shots. Coach is wingman, and you're having a great time. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
that's the type of guy you want to be around. That's the type of personality you need to bring people to the sit. Shout out the sit, by the way, Lane. Give me. I want a ship. I want to come to the sit. Sure, I want to come to the sit, but Chris Beard, on the other hand, whether it's the skeletons in his closet, just his natural personality, I don't get that same vibe. Now, Chris Beard, phenomenal X's and O's coach. Once you get to the game, I trust Chris Beard to outcoach anybody, including Todd Golden on Saturday, by the way. However, when it comes to recruiting and putting together a roster, no shot he gets a better team than this. It would be very, very difficult for him to have a better on paper roster than what he has right now at Ole Miss.
This is a team it's a veteran roster. You're going to have to replace some key pieces. I mean, he has worked the portal pretty well throughout his tenure. Like go back to Texas Tech before his real thing. He got Mac McClung from Georgetown. Worked out pretty well. They're 6-8 in quad one games, and Chris Beard has not been the best in quad one games, at least relative to other coaches that he's in the conversation with. Some of that has to do with where he's been. Some of it has to do with underperforming in games like this, which I do think the Tennessee win is big for multiple aspects. But this is Florida's a different beast to me. Florida's a different beast. I think I like Ole Miss to beat a lot of teams that they will play in the SEC tournament and a lot of teams they might play in the NCAA tournament. Florida is one of those teams that I'm, without looking at the bracket, putting them in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I think. Well, I mean, I have to see the bracket because what if they somehow wind up? No, because they'll be a one seed pretty much, right?
Right. I think the Elite Eight is the first time you're like, all right, who is Florida playing?
Yeah, if they're a one seed, if they somehow wind up at two, which I don't think they will, but they might. If they somehow wind up at two, I might be looking down and being like, well, hopefully they don't get like a third seed Kentucky.
That might be a good point, but I have the latest bracketology from Lucas Harkins at Heat Check. He is legitimately one of the best that do this. He's better than Lenardi, better than Palm, better than everyone you see on TV. He's one of the best that do this. The four seeds, so Florida gets a one. The four seeds right now projected to be Iowa State, Maryland, Arizona, and Purdue. Like all solid teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think Florida wins any of those games by 10.
Say those teams again.
Iowa State, Maryland, Arizona, Purdue.
Maryland got some smoke for Florida. Maryland got something from.
I want to love Maryland. I can't get over the fact that they have five guys.
That's that. Basketball's 5-on-5, brother.
It's gonna get them to the second weekend, but
Basketball's 5-on-5.
start, you you start chasing down everybody. You start chasing down everybody. You need to tap out for a second. I don't trust who Maryland's got to put in there, but that's a
Get a
conversation
week
for
off.
that's a conversation for a different day. Ken Palm has Florida winning this game 83-72 in Gainesville. 11 points is a pretty sizable difference. You think Florida can cover that number? How do you see this playing out
Nah, I think that's easy money. I think that's easy money. I think
for
Florida wins
Florida?
this one pretty. Yeah, I think Florida wins this pretty handily. Honestly, I think they win by 15 plus. Um, it's really, really hard to play as a basketball team when you have a veteran group that is trying to sell yourself. I'm not trying to make a joke here, but you're trying to sell yourself to like the G League in Europe, and you're trying to play basketball beyond Saturday.
Hmm.
And your coach is trying to sell himself to Indiana, and he's trying to coach beyond Saturday. But you're not trying to sell yourselves to Ole Miss as a program at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. Florida is locked in. They have bigger goals. Their sales pitches have been made. If Todd Golden wants another job, he can have it. If Elijah Martin's going to play at the next level, like, he knows where he's going to play. Probably not the NBA, but he knows where he's going to play beyond Florida, right? Like their job's done. Now their only goal is like, let's go out with a bang. Ole Miss still has a lot to prove to people that are outside of campus.
Yeah. I'm going Florida as well, and that has everything to do with Florida and really nothing to do with Ole Miss. That's how good I think Florida is. I think Ole Miss can still put forth a good effort. It's, they could lose this game by 20, and I don't think it would change how I feel about Ole Miss. Like just a reflection of how good Florida is. But we'll see. Crazier things have happened, and if Ole Miss does go on the road and pull the upset, maybe we do need to have a conversation about the Rebels. Which, if that happens, we will do that in the recap, which will be up shortly after the game on the channel. So make sure you like and subscribe.